Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna make a DIRNDL again because Oktoberfest is right around the corner and we definitely need to make a new design. And as you can see right here, I am wearing one, and that is actually the one or the version that we're gonna make today. It is my sample, which just happened to work out almost perfectly. So let me show you the special feature of this dress. There is a heart cut out. I think it is so cute, so cute. Like, look at it. And obviously you can cover up and like wear a blouse like this one underneath, so the lace would show through the heart here in the back, which also looks absolutely stunning. You can do it like me, which is like a bit more out there. You can do sleeves, you can do whatever you want. Obviously the apron is not part of the actual dress, as that is also something you can change out and design color-wise yourself, which is something I absolutely love about the traditional dress. And obviously it has pockets right here, which are hidden underneath the apron. And another thing that I updated or did differently to my last year's design is my skirt, because last year I did a pleated skirt and this year I'm gonna do a gathered skirt, which is so much more voluminous, which I am in love with. I mean, look at that. It's just so big and so huge, which is amazing. I can't wait to twirl in that. This is my sample, so I didn't need too many tweaks and I was able to actually make a whole dress out of it, which is amazing. So that's the fabric I chose for my bodice, which is just this beautiful jacquard that I had from this video actually up here that you can watch. I did a couple of months ago, and I really love this fabric and I think it complements this ochre mustard yellow color of my skirt, which is actually a Duchess satin, perfectly. And then with a red apron. Like, I love it. It is so unconventional. Like, I see a lot of, greens, a lot of reds, a lot of whites, any shades of pink, obviously. But like mustard yellow with red and then everything in blue. Not too much out there, I would say, but I am totally in love with it. I love the color combo. I think it is super flattering, and yeah, so that's number one that I did. Obviously we're gonna make another one today, and for that I actually also chose one of the fabrics that I used for the mini dress that I made, that I linked for you guys up here, which is this mint green with a like leaf kind of structure on it in gold, which I think would look really, really nice with, any skirt color, honestly. But as of right now, I'm gonna choose this dusty pink. I think that would also look really, really nice and just screams my name. So that's that. Maybe I'm gonna go out and buy some like sky blue Duchess satin, like my background. I think that would also look really, really nice. And I don't own a blue DIRNDL, so that would be an option. I included two back options. So if you don't want to make the heart cutout, I also included option 2 for the back. That just doesn't have the heart. It's just a full back like a traditional one. And you can just choose either option 1 or option 2. Make sure to choose option 1 in both the back and side back, and don't like cross over because it wouldn't work. But yeah, that's all for now. Let's actually get started. I'm super excited. Okay, I had to change out of the DIRNDL because it was pretty hot. It's like 35 degrees at the moment and my iron is doing the last bits, So let's actually get started with the bodice. For the bodice, we're gonna do a zipped front closure, and since we have the heart cut out in the back, we actually have to do like a little finesse, if you can say that, with the lining. So we're gonna do the side seams, gonna get sewn together last and finished with some bias tape method that I was talking about and failed miserably in showing in my last video on a DIRNDL. Obviously I'm gonna show you how to make this. I made it for the mock-up here as well, and But this is what it looks like. As you can see on the inside, it is finished with bias binding around the side seams, and then I opted to do that for the arm cutout as well, the arm's eye as well, because I felt like that would be the neatest finishing method with the heart cutout in mind, because it gets pretty tricky as there is just a very narrow space to turn anything, you know, right sides out, and depending on what fabric you use, and since usually you're using more of a thicker fabric for the bodice, it is nearly impossible, and I was not able to turn it over through, you know, essentially that big of a distance right here. So that is what we have to do. And I feel like that's fine. I didn't have any problems or issues with the bias binding in the arm's eye, so that's what I'm going to show you to do as well for this video. So let's get started with the front piece. And as you can see right here, we have like almost a contrary neckline in the front, which I made like this to, you know, complement the heart in the back. So it basically is like an upside down heart with coming up to your neck in a way, or at least that was the intention behind that. So this is the side front piece that goes right here, and pardon my fabric just rolling up. You can't really see it that well, but basically that is what we have going on here in the front, and we're just going to put right sides together of front and middle front pieces and close the front dividing seam right here while mashing up the bust notch here and obviously the waistline. And if you need it, because, you know, fabrics behave differently, some stretch, some don't, meaning like depending on how the weave is, you know, like this right here does not stretch in this direction at all, but kind of needs to because there is a curve in the front piece. You can help it ease together by just cutting towards the stitching line into the piece that just doesn't want to behave, you know, and open up that tiny bit better. And now it kind of stretches it. Let's sew this together. Repeat the same for the other side. Okay, let's iron the seam allowance open. Next up, we're going to put the side piece on here. So we're going to do exactly the same. There are 2 notches. And, you know, since this is like a pretty stark curve, you probably want to like cut into this here and here. Match up that notch right here. Now you're just going to sew the princess seam together. And that is what it looks like right here. As you can see, that is the front pieces ready. Let's continue with the back pieces, and we have a lower back piece right here with the start of the heart, and a upper back piece that has the upper part of the heart, and it is cut right here, and we're gonna leave it, you know, being cut there. We're not gonna put these together because otherwise we can't turn this whole thing, this whole bodice right sides out. So we're gonna leave this for now and close the back princess seams the same way as we closed the front princess seams. Of course, I'm also gonna iron the seam allowance open, and I'm gonna add the top stitches as well to continue this overall decorative themes there. So with the lower back portion now done, the upper back portion, as I said, we're gonna leave this small seam open for until after we have turned the facing and shell pieces right sides out. So the only thing that is left to do now before we continue with the facing, or like the lining, is to close the shoulder seams right here. And I'm also gonna iron them open and like do the stitches over there. And then we can, you know, repeat the same thing for the lining. Okay, so now that the lining is also sewn together, as I said, I sewed it together the exact same way as the shell. We can put right sides of shell and lining together. This right here is the front and the upper back piece. And from the center front right here, where it makes this turn upwards, I'm gonna start pinning both layers together while matching up all of the seams that I have here. So I'm going to match up the bust seam right here, the front dividing seam, and then the shoulder seam, then of course the center back, and do the same way back to the other side of the front. And for the back piece, the lower back piece, you're just gonna put together the seam where the heart cutout sits, as you can see right here, just this. And with all of that pinned together, we're gonna close the neckline and then also the cutout at the lower back right here. I'm gonna cut towards my stitching line right now because I want to try to understitch as far and as best as I can, and especially with these stark curves, it's just easier to manage it with, you know, the seam allowance being made able to open up like this, and especially in the round areas around the neck and the front. And also you need to do that anyways for turning everything right sides out, otherwise you're just not going to be able to iron everything flat. It just won't lay flat because the fabric is just not able to stretch out as much as it needs to. And then for the back, also in order to understitch, we need to cut towards the stitching line here in order to be able to even like open it up for that. Also cut towards the start of the round area of the heart right here. And now we can go ahead and understitch all of the seams that we just did. So before we iron anything, we're gonna have to do another seam, and that's gonna be the tricky one. As you can see right here, I'm at the upper back portion, and we're gonna put right sides together of the shell and the lining here as well, and just pin the heart, the upper piece of the heart, the round area, together, and sew it together as well. And that's gonna be tricky to turn right sides out, because we're gonna have essentially this big of a space to put all of this through. And, you know, I have a plan B if it doesn't work out, but it would be the best option if it were to work out. So that's what I'm gonna try to do, and I'm just gonna hope for the best. So we have like 5 centimeters for 1/2 of the front piece to go through, which should be doable, so fingers crossed. And before we turn everything right sides out, we're gonna just also cut towards the stitching line here, as once we've turned it, there is no going back. There's also this area right here, which we have to snip off, and then probably it's also best to, you know, cut the seam allowance pretty tiny right here, otherwise it won't lay correctly on the other side then, once it's turned right sides out. And now the interesting part begins, where we have to, through this small hole here, turn everything right sides out. Okay, that worked better than expected. I rolled this up to be as small as it can get to be able to, you know, just pull it through, and it worked out very, very well. Super glad that worked out. Now let's just, you know, wiggle this like kind of around to pop out that edge, and yeah, continue with ironing. I'm super happy that worked out. I was kind of worried that it wouldn't. So let's iron the ditch of the seam of the neckline towards the lining. Okay, and now it's time to put the heart together completely. So since we have the arm's eyes still open, we can just open the heart right here and put shell and lining together like that. Stitch this close, and we have everything on the inside also, you know, perfectly finished. And we're just gonna close here, and the same on the other side of the heart. And that is what the result looks like. So as you can see right here, everything is clean and nice. We can give it another press. Obviously, the seam allowance in here is pressed open so that it is as flat as possible. And what I did here all around the still raw edges, apart from the waistline, is to just match up everything perfectly, because the next step will be to close the side seams and finish all of that, and then finish the arm's eyes with bias tape. So you want to make sure that everything right here just is right on top of each other, like all the seams and stuff, and you want to go over into the seam allowance with like a basting stitch or whatever and fuse the layers together, and we're just going to use them as one from now on. Same to the center front seam here, as we're going to put a zipper later on once the skirt is attached. But apart from that, basically the bodice is done. Obviously this has no decorations apart from, you know, stitches right here yet. But I'm gonna see what I want to do at the very end once, you know, I also have the skirt color picked out and whatnot, because I don't know yet. And, you know, you want to make sure that at least the arm's eye is finished before you embellish the heart cutout, because this right here is gonna get like really tiny, and you don't want to have anything poking or like anything else on the other side restricting your sewing machine space, your sewing space basically. So let's baste all of the seams that I just mentioned together, and then continue with closing the side seams. So now that the side seams are closed, as you can see right here, I also added the bias tape to finish the edges here. I also did the double stitches. We're going to continue finishing the edges of the arm's eye. I went ahead and just overlocked the arm's eye because my fabric just started to fray too much for my liking, so that's just what I did. It's not necessary, you're not going to see that, but you know, if your fabric tends to fray, overlock it to prevent, you know, your piece getting too small, because that's essentially what's happening. So I'm gonna take my bias tape right here and start stitching it onto my arm's eye at the underarm seam. I'm gonna just fold in the raw edge on that side and then just go around the arm's eye at about 7 millimeters. You don't want to do 1 centimeter like your full seam allowance, because once you turn it towards the inside, there's gonna be a little bit of the shell piece, you know, going towards the inside, which makes up the 3 missing millimeters of the seam allowance, because you want to iron the ditch of the seam towards the inside. That's what you have to account for basically. So do a little less than your seam allowance actually is to be able to iron it nicely and have, you know, not a bigger armhole than what it's meant to be. Let's go around the arm's eye as I just said, and then continue with finishing the arm's eye. So in order to finish this edge here, I want to make sure that everything is neat and tidy, which is why I want to stitch from the right side, like right side's facing up on the sewing machine. Usually you would just, you know, put this under the sewing machine from the wrong side, stitch around it and call it a day. But because I want to do the double stitches, I need a precise distance to my arm's eye in order to get the same look. So what I want to do is fix the outer rim of my bias tape to the inside, like all around the arm's eye. So I am able to have this facing up under the sewing machine and have like the most precise way of knowing where to stitch. If that doesn't matter for your project, then it is way easier to, you know, just not pin this like I am doing and just stitch with the wrong side facing up and have to deal with nothing basically. But my case is a bit more specific. That's why I'm showing you this as well, if you might want to do the same thing. And now I'm gonna stitch around the arm's eye twice, trying to imitate this stitching right here, and it's gonna end up looking like this. So it's time for the skirt finally, and I chose this very, very cute gray bluish satin. This is a Duchess satin, so it's a bit thicker and it's gonna, you know, like stand a little bit more, so it's gonna look a bit more puffy, which I like, so that's why I chose this fabric. And it also has like a very luxurious sheen, I feel like, whereas other satins could have something that looks a little bit more cheaper in my opinion. So that's why I chose this one. And as you can see, I already cut into my piece right here. This is my front piece. On the pattern for the skirt, you only have one pattern for the back and the front since it's a rectangle. Basically, you just cut out two salvage to salvage strips that are 75 centimeters long, and one of those two you just cut in half. So one lays on fold and the other one doesn't. The one that doesn't lay on fold is going to be the front piece, and that's where you're going to put the cuts for the pockets in. And you also want to, before you cut into the pocket, you want to iron interfacing onto that line. But everything is, you know, on the pattern piece. I just wanted to explain that it is both the front and the back pattern piece, and all of the, you know, special things that are on the pattern are for the front piece. The back piece is just one whole panel. You don't need to do anything apart from, you know, gathering. And with that prepared, I can go ahead and put my pockets in place. I went ahead and also overlocked these. You can overlock them at the end as well, you know, together. I just went ahead and prepared them. So what we're gonna do now is put the pockets right sides together with the satin, and you're gonna find a notch up here until where you're gonna want the pocket to be put in. And right here, since we don't have seam allowance on the skirt where the pocket's gonna be, we can't, you know, use too much seam allowance there, obviously, because there isn't any. I'm gonna only use 5mm seam allowance for this anyways. But right here at the pocket, I'm gonna do like 5mm, but here at the slit, I'm gonna do 1mm. So if you've ever sewn slits for, you know, your sleeve and stuff, it basically works more or less the same way with the seam allowance, because you're gonna go down to 1mm for the skirt, stay 5mm for the pocket throughout the whole seam, and right here at the waistline you're gonna go up to 5mm again for the skirt as well, like this. And then you're gonna sew from the tip of the slit all the way to that notch up here, and repeat the same for the other side. I will also understitch the seam so that the pocket lays nicer. Okay, and now with the pockets sewn in place, the side that has the longer waistline essentially is the center front area. So the pocket on that side has to be folded inwards, and the other one, you know, just stays like this. So they're gonna sit on top of each other like this, with the pocket in this direction. So let's iron that. I'm gonna make sure that the ditch of the seam is only visible on the wrong side of the fabric, and now this just gets put right on top here. I'm gonna kind of overlap the two a tiny bit so that it just looks nicer from the right side, but basically the pockets should just match up. And I'm just gonna pin the pocket together so that I can sew both pieces together, like so. This is what it looks like from the right side. So now what I'm gonna do is start sewing from here all around the pocket, and then up here I'm going to sew right towards that fold line here where we ironed the pocket towards the wrong side. Turn 90 degrees and go up until the waistline to have a nice ending of the pocket, like a nice finish up here. And that is what it looks like. As you can see, I went right into the fold line here and then straight up to the waistline. If we flip this right sides out now, we can give it a last press. And then the pockets are already done and we can put front and back pieces of the skirt together. So let's do that. Right here I have my selvage edge for the side seam, and I'm gonna leave it like this. This is already, you know, finished. This is not gonna fray, so I'm not gonna do anything to that to finish the seam. Obviously, if you want to, you can overlock the side seam and make it neat and tidy from the inside like that. This right here is my back piece. It's also just a very large rectangle. So let's actually put the selvage edges together here and close the side seam. I'm going to iron the seam allowance open, and then we can go ahead and already finish the hem. For the hem, I'm going to double fold 2 centimeters up, and then I'm going to use hem tape. You can obviously just top stitch it down or do any like decorative stitches. I think that also looks really nice. Or like use some lace that you can put behind and have it like peek out under the skirt, which I think also would look really nice, which I'm also thinking about doing. But whatever the case it might be, I'm going to iron the 2 centimeters up already and then the other 2 centimeters. That's how I definitely want to hem my skirt. Okay, now that the hem is done, as you can see right here, I just ironed it up and used hem tape to fix it in place. Maybe I'll add some decoration later on. You can do that once the dress is done, so I'm not too worried about that. I want to see the result basically in a whole dress, like as a whole dress, and then figure out what decorations I want to do. Same to the apron. I have ideas, but I'm not sure yet. So let's actually finish this. And for that, I'm gonna do 2 rows of gathering stitches into the waistline right here, all around from one center front seam to the other. And then we're basically just gonna gather it to fit the waistline, which is more or less like to the max. We want the puffiest dress. So let's do that. Now that that's done, I'm just gonna gather by pulling on both bobbin threads and yeah, be here for a while. So I have everything gathered up now, and essentially what I'm gonna do is just put my bodice right on top here, and as you can see I overdid it a tiny bit, which is sad. But basically I'm just gonna make this have the same length, like so. This is all that I had to do. And pin both pieces together. And what I also want to do is match up the seams. And then, of course, also the center back. Okay, with all of that prepared, I can go ahead and sew the waistline. I'm also going to overlock it, even though my bodice is already overlocked, but you know, this is just not okay. And then I'm also going to overlock the center front seam as a whole. So now that the skirt is done and basically finished, we can go ahead and close the center front seam and also sew in the zipper. Now I have a normal zipper, not an invisible one or something like that, because this needs to be a strong zipper, especially with this bulky seam here in the waistline, and it's gonna hold, like, you know, the waist seam is pretty tight, so it has to hold that. That's why I don't really recommend using an inseam zipper. I probably would recommend a metal zipper for my mock-up that ended up working. I just used like a very thick metal zipper for like coats and stuff, which is obviously also too much, but that's a metal zipper that works really well as well. So that's what I would recommend. You're gonna find the zipper notch in your skirt. Basically what I like to do is put the center front seam together from the neckline with like a basting stitch all the way down to the zipper notch, and from then on I'm gonna back tack right here and sew the skirt seam together normally with like a normal stitch and, you know, back tacking here and here, and that's just gonna help me sew in the zipper evenly. So let's actually do that. And that is what it looks like. I made sure to iron it open and flat. And now basically what I'm gonna do is just pinning the zipper like onto the center of that seam, and I'm gonna, from the right side, sew the zipper in place. Okay, now we just need to open up the seam. And with all of that done, the only thing basically is to fold the seam allowance of the zipper up here at the neckline, like towards the inside, and you can just bar tack that in place. It's super easy, or you can do that by hand, since it is a pretty thick area there. Your machine might not, you know, do that. So whatever is working for you. Now it's basically time to decorate your dress however you like. You can do something down the zipper, you can do something around the heart. I think would look really pretty. Maybe I'm doing that afterwards as well, not for the photo shoot and stuff, but maybe if I find the time before the actual Oktoberfest. Who knows? I have a few pearls and stuff and trim coming in the next couple of weeks, so who knows if I find the time, and I think that would look really, really nice. And that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. I couldn't wait. I just put it on because it is, I'm so excited. If you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel and ring the bell so you'll get notified every time that I post. I post on Sundays, so you can keep an eye out for that. Hopefully I'm gonna finish the trench coat in a bit. I really did not feel like working on it. That's why I made this dress. I was super excited about this project, not so much about the trench coat. So that's why I'm kind of have it on hold, but I don't want to, you know, have it on hold. I want to continue, so don't worry about that. If you haven't already, please go ahead and follow my socials. Links to that are in the description down below. I do a lot of reels and stuff that you might be interested in, so go ahead and check it out and give me a follow there. The most direct way to support me and keep videos just like this one coming is to head over to my Etsy store. The link to that is in the description down below. You find all the patterns. Also this one here, as I said, you don't need the back cut out. You can also just do the full back, whatever you want. It's both included in the pattern. And I'm super excited to see your dresses and whatever you chose, you know, fabric wise, combinations wise, because you can make so much from just one pattern essentially. So don't forget to tag me on Instagram if you post it. I am super happy to repost it. I'm actually always super excited if you post stuff from my patterns. A special thank you to my channel members. You can get exclusive benefits through the link in the description down below, so check that out as well. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and I'm gonna see you next Sunday. Bye guys!